So what we can do here, just to kind of have a bit of a play around with it, I can change the theme to Prime, or even Simon's theme. And to create that theme, I will go into the CSS and imports folder, and there's a configuration here. So we'll see here that there's some colors which have been defined, and there's also some themes which have been defined as well. So what I need to do is first of all create my color. So I can set a variable called Simon's color, and I can add a color to it. It's going to look very garish, but that's fine. And the next thing I'm going to do is create a theme. So I can copy Alt, because obviously that's a very similar setup, and I can name my theme. I can then also add a color as well. And obviously I'm going to be using the Simon's color for that one. And if I hit save on that, and I've already added my theme into here, and I hit save there, this is all running in the background and getting all the information that I require and recompiling all the CSS. So if I go back into my Chrome browser and hit refresh on my local host, you can see there that it's now changed all the color themes for me, but not to the color I wanted. And that's why. Little typo just there, but that doesn't matter. Let's try that again. And there we go. You can see now all the colors have changed to the banner header and so on and so forth. It's not only the config as well, which you can kind of tweak around with and have a bit of a play with. You can also create your own CSS classes. So for example, I can create one called large text, and I can drop into the main.stylus file, and I can drop into here as well and create a CSS class. I can open that class up and I can put a font size in there if I want to, or any other CSS values. Again, it's watching these files, so every time I make a change, it's changing it for me, creating a new CSS file for me, and then obviously when I refresh, it's now there for me. So now that's gone to a big font size for us. So you can see how kind of things work, how kind of this development process works. You change stuff locally, it's watching in the background, it's rebuilding for you all the time. And once you've done that, then obviously it will re-render it for you when you're refreshing that browser window. And that's fine. So that's kind of a very quick introduction into kind of how you can add your own additional styles in and kind of have a quick play around with the config as well. Again, there's a few different variables in here which you might want to have a look at depending on your styling guides and how they work. By all means, you can make as many themes as you want with different colors. All it's doing is when we go through and creating the CSS document for you to use, it is literally just appending. So we have Prime and Alt as a default theming. So anything like a banner header or a button that requires colors, it just has 2 themes. So if you create another 2 themes, it will then have 4 themes to work with. So it just brings that into play for you and works nicely. You can also see down here as well, we have all the modules from CSS, and what you can do here is say, for example, you know you're not going to be using tables or checkboxes, for example. You can comment those out and just save yourself a bit of space. So if you're a die-hard person and says they'll never ever use a table again, you can remove those out. And again here as well, you've got your H1 to 5 values, which you can play around with and tweak until you're happy with those, again, depending on your branding guidelines. So what we want to do, I've been given a task here of basically I have a Yahoo API which goes and gets some weather. And this is something which we want to bring in for the university. We want to have a weather tile which shows a forecast of 10 days of weather for the university. We think that's going to be beneficial to students. They can tell if they need to pack their umbrella tomorrow, or if it's nice and sunny, they can go and wear some shorts. So we're starting off with our boilerplate here. A few things which we're going to tweak out first of all. So we're going to remove these p tags because I know for sure I'm not going to need those. I'm going to switch the theme back to Prime. I'm going to add an icon in as well, and all our icon sets are available in NPM as well. We use Font Awesome, and that's kind of what we use. That's just obviously a nicer way of bringing in icons and and rendering them, especially on Retina the screens. It allows better scaling for us. And so if I do that, I might just call it My Weather actually instead of My Weather Screen. Seems a bit too big for the lineage there. Again, I can just give this a refresh. Okay, this is kind of looking a bit cleaner, a bit tidier. So the first thing I need to do within React is obviously to get the initial state. And what this is kind of a prerequisite of all the stuff that you want to work with. So you can define all of what you need to do in here. Unfortunately, I've put it right in the wrong area, so that's a good start by me. So let's try that again. We're going to put get initial state outside of the render. I wondered why it was causing me so many problems there. And what this does is it allows us to set up some variables which we're going to use on this screen. So the one that we're going to use is loading. And loading is just going to be a way of saying to the user, hey, I'm in the middle of doing something, I'm going to go and load some data, please bear with me. So we can put in a variable or a let if you wanted to of loading, and then what I can do is there's a property on a basic segment called loading, and I can pass in that function, that variable, sorry. So that's going to be set to true, so if I give this a refresh now, that's just going to be spinning. It's never going to stop spinning because we're not telling it to, but that's just kind of giving the user some information that we're trying to get some information for you, please bear with us, just a UX UI functionality there. So after we've gone and got the initial state, and obviously it's done its first render of that, the next thing we're going to use is component did mount. And the reason we use component did mount is kind of almost like a jQuery document.ready basically. Everything's mounted up. What's the first thing that you want me to kind of work with? What's the first thing that you want me to do? And that is going to be this dot get data. And this is just a function. You could put this function's information directly into the component did mount. I like to separate mine out, just it makes it a bit more readable, a bit more easier if you're using multiple functions in there. And in obviously get data, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using that request module from previous. So we need to bring that in. So again, we would head over to the documentation and we would go and find out what the require tag is for it. I already kind of know it, so I'm going to cheat a little and I'm going to just bring it in. So once I've brought that in, obviously my lint is going to say that it's never used, so please start using it or remove it if you don't. So I'm going to use this and I'm going to use a get command for this one. So, you know, there's others in here, there's post and so on and so forth. But get is the one I'm going to be using today. And then what I can do in here, I can obviously put in the URL which I want it to go and hit. So it's query.yahoo-apis.com/v1//yql/YQL/exlibris and then weather. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a query onto the end of this as well. So these are going to be parameters which I'm setting. So I've been looking at the documentation for this service and it's told me that I require a format, so I want to return JSON. And it's also said that I require a city name as well, so I'm going to use Wolverhampton, which is obviously where I'm at the moment. And at the end of this, it's going to return a callback for me. And we're going to be using a callback function which will have an error and a response. And at this point what we can do is we can just console log this out. So we can console log out the error and we can console log out the response as well. So hopefully what we would want to see is obviously the loading spinner is still going to be there because we haven't updated the state at this point. But there should be a null on error and response should come back with some JSON information for us. So we've hit save on that. I've just come back into my Chrome window. I'm going to open up my developers tools from Chrome, and I'm going to make sure my console's selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit refresh. So in here I should have 2 logs, and I do indeed. And you can see here it's using the source mapping for me. It's telling me exactly where these are on the JSX file. And obviously when I go and inspect, it's showing me it in the JSX file as well, which is great. So I'm put that in. So we've gone and done our request. It's come back for us. So let me just run that again just to make sure I know where I am. So I've got my information. I've run in, and you can see here we've got our null response from our error log, and we've also got our response from our main area. So this is obviously the res, which is coming back, or the response coming back, which is fantastic. And in the console, I can start opening this up. So this is a JSON object at the moment, which we're tapping through. So we have body, we have query, we have results. This is going to go on for a little bit. And we have channel. And in channel is a load of lovely information which we want to start maybe using and having a look at. So from Yahoo we can get the astronomy information, so it will tell me when sun rises and obviously the sunset tonight. The atmosphere, it will tell us the forecast and also the current conditions right now as well, which is quite useful. And also the location information as well, so like our city, our country and our region, so we can see where we are. And the forecast information here is probably what we want. It's an array of 10 days worth of forecast, which we want to extract out. Brilliant. So we've gone in, we've grabbed some data, we've got something back. It's not erroring for us. That's fantastic. That's exactly what we want. So what we can do here now, obviously if we wanted to, we could do just a quick error check to make sure we're not getting an error. For example, if we were getting an error, you could do something, you could set a state of error equals true, maybe put a message on there saying unfortunately this service is not available, or something has gone wrong, please contact IT services. We'll just put a console login as now for don't panic. That just keeps everyone happy. But what we're going to do now is within here we can then set this state. So we're going to do this.setState, and we can start setting state on this React component. So if you ever used React before, React is based on state-driven architecture. So we create a state and that goes and re-renders the DOM element for us. And once we come back, it will then if we then update that state or we change the properties in that state, it will then re-render for us again. And it doesn't re-render by completely ditching the DOM and destroying it. What it does is it has something called the virtual DOM. And that gets updated with all the new HTML and CSS and new information that's getting passed through. And as that information gets changed, what it does is it goes and looks at the actual DOM and says, what do I need to update here? What's actually changed? What's different? And it will only inject those parts into the DOM that have changed. So you don't get that kind of flash, which you kind of get with jQuery. And it doesn't break focus on inputs or selects, which is really good for users, because obviously that means that there's no problems of anything like that. So, you know, if you're filling out in a massive form and every time you hit a select box and the form updated, it would reset you to the top. It's quite an annoyance, and it's a bad flow. And obviously for developers, if you want to try and, well, they were last on this select, so now I need to put the focus back down here. It gets quite complex very quickly. So there's 2 parameters which we're going to set. We're going to set something called weather, which we've never set before. So that will be null until we've set it here now. And we're just going to go through and we're just going to go right. So res.body.query.results. And we'll leave it at channel because I want this location information to show to the user, and I also want the forecast as well. I'm going to drill down a bit more, but we'll just leave it like that for now. So I'm going to set that, and then what I'm also going to set is loading to equal false, because now I've completed getting my information and everything's going to re-render. That means now I can basically turn off the loading spinner and tell the user, you know, it's time, you're about to see some information from us. So I can create something called weather and just pass that through. And I can just log these out here just to make sure everything is working fine. So just 2 console logs there, and I'm just creating this new variable of weather and defining it to the state. So what should happen here is obviously weather is going to null or undefined for the start run, and loading will equal true. And then once it's got the data, weather will equal all of that information we just got from that JSON feed down to the channel. So after channel, it will show me that information. And loading should equal false. And so if I give that a refresh now, that's rebuilt in the background. And you can see there exactly that. So we have an undefined for weather and loading state of true. And because I'm on a bit of a fast internet connection, straight away it's gone off and got that and pulled it back. So you can now see that we've got my object of information and loading equals false. Brilliant. So that's all now coming through. That's all now into my render function. So now I can start having a play with my information and start getting my data ready. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I'm going to create 2 variables. I'm going to create one called forecast and one called subtitle. And I'm just going to put a prerequisite around this, or an if statement, which is basically going to say, if loading equals false and there's weather, then we're going to allow these to be created. So forecast is then going to equal weather.item.forecast. And subtitle is going to equal weather.location dot city plus weather dot location dot country. You can add a few more in. I know obviously in the States and stuff like that, or in different regions, obviously you have kind of the region areas are probably going to be your states or something like that. But obviously in the UK, quite small, we can just go with city and country and most people know where you're talking about. So we have those and that's all set up. So obviously, again, my linter is telling me you're not using these variables, so that's fine. So what I can do here is there's a property again called subtitle, and I can add in my subtitle to my banner header, and I can just log out my forecast if I require it. So I can bring that in and hit save. And so you can see here now that hasn't done anything. I believe that's subtext actually. Do apologise. It's subtext. There we go. So you can see once that's loaded in, it's now telling me my weather and it's dropping in my location for me. If actually, I'll put a comma there, just so it looks a bit nicer. But you can see there I'm now messing around with some information, and you can see I've now got my 10 items ready to create this forecast for me. So we have obviously a method of doing this. We could put a for each loop around it and maybe push the content in, you know, to a variable with HTML, and then after that output that out. But we've kind of already thought about that for you guys. So if I go to npm.campus7.net and log in, and I go over to my AEK libs, we have this thing called a list view. And a list view is basically a listed view and allows us to drop information in a very simple way like this. So I'm going to bring that in. So if I click on the little code button here, you can see that I can get the variable which is being used to bring that in. So I can scroll back up to my top and require that. And then also what I can do here is I can say, well, here's my list view. And it's going to have a variable of items on it. Within that, we're going to have forecast. and then that's self-close. That's a self-closing tag. Okay, that looks good. So if I hit save and come back into here and refresh, there we go. It's showing me scattered showers, mostly cloudy, rain. Sounds like typical English summertime weather, so we're okay here. Obviously, this isn't showing us a lot of information. This is just showing us really the text part of the forecast. And this is because the list view itself has been designed to pick up certain object ideas and information. So we have properties which we can pick up. For example, text, label, and obviously properties we can add in as well. So if you're populating this via an object, you have control of how that data is returned via JSON, you might be able to define these pre-source. And then obviously that means all you have to do is type this in like this, and it works. Unfortunately, we know that the modern day is not like that, and obviously we don't have access to all of our data. We don't have control. And also sometimes you might want to format things in a slightly different way. So obviously we've got this text here which is scattered showers, but it's not populating date or day or high or low temperatures for me. So I want to put this in somehow. And to do this, we're going to be using something called an item factory. And the item factory basically allows us to loop through and get that information and pass that back over. So you can see here, I can just come into here. So again, it's just a difference here of just adding this function in, and it's going to do a return value, and then I can populate this out. But you can see here, I've obviously got to change my require at the top, because now not only am I bringing in list view, but I'm also bringing in the item as well. So I can change that. So I can add in here, item factory. And in there, I'm going to be creating a function, but I'll do the 6 way of doing it because it's a bit nicer. And it's going to ask me for a name of that. So obviously, if I had a list of grades, then obviously I would call it a grade. This is forecast, but it's a day. So each one of these is a day of forecast. So I'm going to work with that. And then I'm going to just pop a return in here. And we then need to create something in here, so I can just put my item for the moment, and I could just log out each of the days here. So I can go back now and refresh. And what this is going to do is every time it loops through that array of information, should do. Give that another spin. Here we go. You can see now there's no information, so it's just blank. But you can see here it's listing me out all of the information which is available in each of my objects. Which is good. I can now start comparing what values each one has, so I can kind of see which one could be used again and again and again, and obviously so there's no missing information. I can do if statements obviously above the return of my item, so I could say, well, if date exists, then populate it like this, format it in this way. If text exists, then add it this way. Otherwise, just use this default text, which I've got here. Any kind of the standard if statements and kind of any functionality that you want from kind of JavaScript and React, you can kind of build into just above that return, pretty much how you do with the render. We don't really need to do much about that. It was just kind of giving you a bit of extra source of information, but we can put in now standard HTML tags if we wanted to, and I can start building this out. So I've obviously got the text, which is the kind of the information of what the weather is going to be. There's obviously a p tag. I can drop a class name onto this. Little just gotcha there that the React stuff has for some strange reason they reserved class. So if you're working within HTML elements to add a class name to something, it is class name in camel case like that. So just be aware of that. And we'll do a day.low which is going to give me the information of the low temperatures. I'll just nip back into here, and yeah, there is a day.high as well, so I can bring this in as well. So again, just kind of standard HTML, CSS stuff. And then what do I need to do as well? I've got some data. Yeah, I've got a day, and I've got a date as well, so I can bring that information in as well for the user. And obviously, like I say, I'm just building this up, so I'm just seeing what I've got available for me data-wise, looping through each one, and then bringing this forwards. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'll see how that looks, see how that renders, and give that a refresh. So you can see here, it's looking a bit all over the place. Things aren't aligning very nicely. There's obviously padding there. There's a bit more padding on the H3. There's some padding underneath there. So it's looking all a bit up and down. So there's something I can do about that. I can obviously go back into my list view and I can check the properties of it, and this will give me a property which I require, which is formatted. And basically formatted basically removes all of the margins around any of the items in the children. So it just keeps it all looking a bit more formed and nice. I'll just try and find the example for you here. Formatted. So you can see here, instead of having kind of margin on H1s and P tags inside of it, it keeps it all nice and clean and makes it look very presentable. So definitely going to go for that tag. And as again, you can see we've got some code examples here for you, and you can just copy the property and paste that in and hit save, and then I can go back to my area and hit refresh. There we go, that's looking a lot nicer now, that's looking a lot cleaner. Maybe I want to take the H3 tag and put it here, just at the top. I can now start playing around with it as much as I like. Maybe I want to italic the date. I could maybe remove that small tag from the temperatures. Maybe that's not looking too great. But whichever way I want it now, I've got some data. I can start playing around with it. I can add CSS classes to it. I can do whichever way I want it to. And that's kind of the first kind of bit of the demo there for you. So that's kind of the code base structure and how we kind of use React in this way. So when I did the console logging out, you may have noticed that within every day there's a code. And the code is something which really perplexed us when we were writing this the first time round, and obviously getting prepared for the demo state. We had no idea what it was. We were getting this feed from Yahoo, and obviously we were getting some really good information back, you know, days, dates, text, highs and low values of data, and days of weather forecasts. But this day code kept coming up, and we had no idea what it was. So I kind of made it a very personal mission of mine to go and find out what it was. I hate not knowing what something is. And what I found was, when I was kind of crawling through all of the bits and pieces from Yahoo and what they kind of use the weather system for on their side, is I found that it actually related to an image. If I do day.code, and then what I can do here is I can use a thumbnail variable and just stick a thumb in there and give that a refresh. And it brings out some lovely little thumbnail images for you to use on your weather area here for it. So looks very nice, doesn't it? But I'm here and I'm trying to scroll down. I can only see 7 days worth of weather, just about, but I can't scroll, unfortunately. This modal window's obviously got a fixed height on it. I can't get past that. The content's actually flowing over it. So the way to do this, and this is a pretty common thing which sometimes you will forget about, so we do try and remind you, is we can add in something we call a panel. What a panel does is basically say, if a area is too big, for that content modal box, and obviously on the web as well. If it's in situ on the phone and the content goes past it, then add a scroll bar element to it. And this allows the area to scroll away. So to bring one in, we're already bringing in a VBox from the layout component, which is a vertical positioning box. So something sits at the top and then that takes up so much space, and then everything else underneath it will take the remainder of the space. Or if there's 3 items, then it will try and level it out as much as possible. We obviously have a panel element as well, and we can put this in onto our page. So I can put a panel in, and obviously can put a key in as well, which just allows React to know which panel I'm talking about. Otherwise it will moan at me and say, I don't know which panel you're talking about. And we can then just tab that in. And you can see here I've removed the panel, I've put the panel in after the banner header. And this is deliberate, because what this means now is when I hit refresh for this final time, when I do the scroll down, the content actually flows underneath the banner header. Which is quite a nice effect. It looks really nice, and it means as well, if you had like a menu system in this banner header area, or if you had a menu, that could also stay on top as well, which is very clean and clear for that area. So that's kind of those bits and pieces all sorted and clicked into place. So we've got our tile now, and everything's just looking really good.